I stood in the center of our cozy suburban home in Chicago, the kind of place where we had shared countless happy moments over the past 9 years. The air was thick with tension as Emma walked in from her business dinner. In my hands was an envelope filled with photographs, evidence given to me by a private investigator. Our love story had begun in college. From the first moment I saw her, I was captivated by her intelligence and beauty. We quickly became inseparable, and within 2 years, we were married. Life with Emma had been nothing short of a dream. We traveled often and had a large circle of friends, and I believed we had a strong, happy marriage. However, a few months ago, things started to change. Emma began staying late at work and frequently had meetings on weekends. Her phone was always on silent, and she grew increasingly irritable and secretive. I tried to ignore my growing unease, but the nagging doubts only intensified. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I hired a private investigator to uncover the truth. Weeks later, he handed me the photographs and videos that shattered my world. There, clear as day, were images of Emma with another man. It was her colleague Dan, and their affair was undeniable. Rage and betrayal consumed me. Our perfect life was a lie, and I felt utterly deceived. Confronting Emma was inevitable. That evening, as she walked through the door, I wasted no time. "Emma, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. She looked at me, surprised but composed. "What is it, Mike?" I threw the envelope onto the coffee table. "Explain this." Emma's face paled as she saw the photographs. For a moment she tried to deny it, but the evidence was irrefutable. Finally she confessed, her voice devoid of any remorse. "Yes, I've been seeing Dan, but it's more complicated than that." Her coldness was more painful than the betrayal itself. As the days passed, I discovered that her affair was only part of a larger plan. Emma intended to gain access to my bank accounts and steal my millions, planning to run away with Dan. I immediately checked my accounts and found that she had already attempted to transfer large sums of money. Thankfully, my security measures had thwarted her efforts. I wasted no time contacting my lawyer and began the process of divorcing her. I also took steps to secure my finances and property. The divorce proceedings were grueling, filled with Emma's lies and manipulations. She tried to paint me as the villain to gain a larger share of our assets. During this tough period, my friends and family stood by me, helping me stay strong and believe in justice. Through the court battles, it became clear that Emma and Dan had been plotting this for a long time. They planned to use my money to start a new life together, but the court saw through their deceit. Emma didn't get a single penny of my millions, and their plans fell apart. After the divorce, I started a new chapter in my life. I learned to trust people again and found solace in my hobbies and friends. The ordeal with Emma taught me to value honesty and integrity in relationships above all else. The first signs of trouble crept in slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. Emma and I had always shared everything, from our daily routines to our deepest secrets. But a few months ago, a subtle shift began to occur. It started with her working late. Emma had always been dedicated to her job, but these late nights became more frequent. At first, I didn't think much of it. Her position at the marketing firm was demanding, and she often had tight deadlines. But then, the weekend meetings began. "I have to go into the office on Saturday," she said one morning, casually over breakfast. "We have a big project and the team needs me." I nodded, offering support. "Of course, just don't overwork yourself." Yet these weekend meetings became a regular occurrence. Emma's phone, once a constant companion, was now always on silent. When it did buzz, she would quickly glance at it, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face, before putting it away. When I asked about it, she would brush it off with a tired smile. "It's just work, Mike. You know how demanding it can be." But the more she said it, the less I believed her. Our conversations grew strained, and I could feel a wall building between us. Nights that we once spent cuddled on the couch, watching our favorite shows, were now often spent in silence. She would claim exhaustion and retreat to bed early, leaving me alone with my thoughts. One evening as we were having dinner, I noticed she was distracted. Her mind seemed a million miles away. "Is everything okay, Emma?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She looked up, startled as if I had interrupted something. "What?" "Oh yes, everything's fine. Just a lot on my mind." I wanted to believe her, but my gut told me otherwise. The woman I loved, The one I thought I knew better than anyone was slipping away from me, and I had no idea why. I confided in my best friend Tom over a few beers one night. "Something's off with Emma," I admitted, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "She's distant, secretive. I don't know what to think." Tom, always the practical one, listened carefully. "Have you talked to her about it?" "I've tried," I said, frustration creeping into my voice. "But she just brushes it off, says it's work." Tom considered this. "Maybe it is just work. But if you're worried, maybe you should look into it. Hire someone to find out what's going on." The idea felt wrong and invasive, but the seed was planted. Over the next few days, my mind kept circling back to Tom's suggestion. Finally, desperation and the need for answers won out. I found a private investigator through a discreet online search. His name was Jack, a former cop with a reputation for thoroughness. When I met him, I laid out my concerns, feeling a mix of guilt and relief. "Mr. Evans, I understand your situation," Jack said, his voice steady and professional. "I'll find out what's going on." Weeks passed with agonizing slowness. Jack provided periodic updates, but there was little to report at first. Then, one afternoon, he called me. "I have something you need to see." We met at a small cafe downtown. Jack handed me an envelope, and I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were photographs and a USB drive. The photograph showed Emma with a man I didn't recognize, but Jack quickly filled in the details. "That's Dan, her colleague," he explained. "They've been seeing each other regularly. The USB has video evidence." I felt a cold wave of shock wash over me. Seeing the images, knowing the truth, was devastating. The woman I loved, the one I had built my life with, was betraying me. "Thank you, Jack," I managed to say, my voice hollow. Driving home, my mind raced. How could this be happening? Emma and I had shared everything. Our lives were so intertwined. The pain of her betrayal was a physical ache in my chest. As I pulled into our driveway, I knew I had to confront her. This couldn't go on any longer. That night, as Emma walked through the door, I was ready. "Emma, we need to talk," I said, the envelope heavy in my hand. She looked at me, her expression wary, and in that moment, I knew there was no going back. The air in the house was thick with tension as I faced Emma. She stood in the doorway, her eyes scanning my face for any hint of what was to come. My heart pounded, the envelope in my hand feeling like a lead weight. "Emma, we need to talk," I repeated, my voice trembling slightly despite my attempt to stay composed. She set down her purse and walked towards me, her expression a mix of confusion and concern. "What is it, Mike? You look upset." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I tossed the envelope onto the coffee table between us. "Explain this." Emma's eyes widened as she recognized the envelope. She hesitated for a moment before picking it up and pulling out the photographs. Her face went pale as she flipped through them, each image a damning piece of evidence. "Where did you get these?" she finally asked, her voice a strained whisper. "Does it matter?" I snapped, unable to keep the anger out of my voice. "I know everything, Emma. The late nights, the weekend meetings, the lies. Who is he? Dan, right? Your colleague." Emma's hands trembled as she dropped the photographs back onto the table. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Yes, it's Dan, but it's not what you think, Mike." I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. "Not what I think? How could it be anything else? You've been lying to me, cheating on me, our entire life together. Was it all a lie?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "Mike, I didn't want it to be like this. I didn't want to hurt you." "But you did," I said, my voice breaking. "You did hurt me. And it's not just the affair. I know about the money, Emma. You tried to steal from me, to take everything I've worked for and run away with him." Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, genuine fear crossed her face. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter how I found out," I interrupted. "What matters is that I know, and I'm not going to let you get away with it." Emma sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "Mike, please. I got caught up in something I couldn't control. Dan, he made me feel things I hadn't felt in a long time. And the money, we thought we could start over, build a new life." "A new life built on lies and theft," I said coldly. "I trusted you, Emma. I loved you. How could you do this to us? To me?" She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "I don't know, Mike. I don't know. It just—" happened. The room fell into silence. I felt a hollow emptiness inside of her betrayal cutting deep. But mixed with the hurt was a growing resolve. I wouldn't let her destroy everything I had built. I wouldn't let her take my future. I've already contacted a lawyer, I said finally, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. We're getting divorced, and I've taken steps to protect my... You won't get a penny from me, Emma. She stared at me, a mix of shock and desperation in her eyes. Mike, please, don't do this. We can work it out. We can fix this. I shook the finality of my decision. Me like a weight lifted. No, Emma, there's no this. You made choices. Live with them. I turned and walked toward the door, the echoes of our shattered life following me. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, and I felt a strange sense of clarity. This chapter of my life was over. It was time to start anew, to rebuild from the ruins of betrayal and deceit. As I drove away, I couldn't help but glance back at the house that had once been a home filled with love and laughter. Now it was just a reminder of everything that had been lost. But in that loss, there was also a glimmer of a chance to begin again, and wiser than before. Days turned into weeks, and the reality of the situation began to sink in. I moved out of our house and rented a small apartment downtown, leaving behind the place had once been filled with love memories. The emptiness was overwhelming, but it was a necessary step in distancing myself from the pain of Emma's betrayal. The divorce proceedings started almost immediately. Sarah, sharp and guiding me through the process with a steady hand. Emma, on the other hand, had hired a high-powered attorney and was determined to fight for everything she could get.
I sat in Sarah's office, feeling the weight of the impending legal battle. "We need to be prepared for anything," she said, her tone serious. "Emma's going to play dirty. She's going to try to paint you as the villain to get a larger share of your assets." I nodded, feeling a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. "What do we need to do?" "Gather as much evidence as possible," Sarah replied. "Document everything, financial records, communications, and anything that shows her intentions and actions. We need to prove that she was planning to steal from you and that the affair was ongoing." Over the next few weeks, my life became a whirlwind of meetings with lawyers, gathering evidence, and preparing for court. I found solace in my friends and family, who rallied around me during this difficult time. Tom, in particular, was a constant support, reminding me to stay strong and keep fighting for what was right. Emma, meanwhile, seemed to be on a mission to destroy me. She spread lies about our relationship, telling anyone who would listen that I had been controlling and abusive. It was a cruel and calculated move, designed to sway public opinion in her favor and make me appear unfit. One evening, as I was organizing documents in my apartment, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "I've uncovered something important," the message read. "Meet me at my office tomorrow morning." The next day, I arrived at Sarah's office with a sense of trepidation. She greeted me with a grim expression and handed me a folder. "You need to see this." I opened the folder to find a series of emails between Emma and Dan. They detailed their plans to take my money and start a new life together, discussing everything from financial arrangements to potential destinations for their escape. The emails were explicit and damning, leaving no room for doubt about their intentions. "How did you get these?" I asked, my voice a mix of shock and relief. "Let's just say we have our ways," Sarah replied with a faint smile. "This is the evidence we needed. With this, we can show the court that Emma's actions were premeditated and malicious." The relief I felt was immense, but it was tempered by a deep sadness. Reading through the emails, I realized just how thoroughly Emma had planned to betray me. The woman I had loved and trusted had turned into a stranger, someone I no longer recognized. The court date arrived, and I walked into the courtroom with Sarah by my side. Emma was already there, sitting with her lawyer, a look of determination on her face. The proceedings began, and both sides presented their cases. Emma's lawyer tried to paint me as a controlling husband, but Sarah was ready with counter-arguments and evidence to refute their claims. When it was our turn, Sarah presented the emails and other documents we had gathered. The judge reviewed them carefully,
his expression growing more serious with each passing moment. Emma's lawyer tried to object, but the evidence was too compelling to ignore. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge delivered his verdict. He ruled in my favor, citing the overwhelming evidence of Emma's deceit and malicious intent. She would receive nothing from my assets, and the divorce was finalized with me retaining full control of my finances and property. As I left the courtroom, a wave of emotions washed over me: relief, triumph, and a lingering sadness for the love that had been lost. Emma's face was a mask of anger and defeat, but I couldn't bring myself to feel any satisfaction in her downfall. Instead, I felt a sense of closure, a door closing on a painful chapter of my life. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding. I threw myself into my work, reconnected with friends, and began exploring new hobbies. The support from those around me was invaluable, helping me find strength and hope amid the chaos. One evening, as I sat on the balcony of my apartment, looking out at the city lights, I felt a sense of peace. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I knew I had the resilience to face whatever came next. Emma's betrayal had been a devastating blow, but it had also taught me the importance of honesty, trust, and the strength to move forward. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to dream of a future untainted by the past. A future where I could find happiness and love again, built on a foundation of truth and mutual respect. And in that moment, I knew I was ready to take the first steps toward that new beginning. With the divorce finalized and Emma out of my life, I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation. The chains of deceit and betrayal had been broken, and I was free to start anew. However, the journey to recovery was far from over. The emotional scars from the ordeal ran deep, and I knew it would take time to heal. My friends and family continued to be my anchor. Tom, my best friend, was particularly supportive, constantly encouraging me to get back into the world and rediscover myself. He dragged me out to social events, introduced me to new people, and made sure I never felt alone. His unwavering support was a lifeline during those initial weeks of solitude. One evening, Tom convinced me to attend a charity gala downtown. It was the kind of event Emma and I used to frequent, but this time it felt different. Without her by my side, I felt exposed and vulnerable, but Tom assured me it was a step towards reclaiming my life. As I entered the grand ballroom, the glittering lights and lively chatter seemed to blend into a blur. I wandered through the crowd, trying to appear engaged but feeling like an outsider. Then, out of nowhere, I found myself face to face with a woman named Laura. Laura was a friend of Tom's, and she had a warm, inviting smile that put me at ease. We struck up a conversation, and I quickly realized how much I had missed genuine human connection. Laura was intelligent, funny, and refreshingly honest. There was no pretense, no hidden agenda, just a sincere desire to get to know me. Over the next few weeks, Laura and I began to spend more time together. We went out for coffee, took long walks in the park, and discovered a shared love for hiking. Our conversations were deep and meaningful, and I found myself opening up to her in ways I hadn't with anyone since Emma. She listened without judgment, offering support and understanding. Despite the growing bond between us, I was cautious. The wounds from Emma's betrayal were still fresh, and I was wary of getting hurt again. Laura sensed my hesitation and never pushed, allowing our relationship to develop naturally. Her patience and kindness were exactly what I needed. As I navigated this new chapter, I also focused on my professional life. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects and challenges. My career had always been a source of pride and fulfillment, and it felt good to immerse myself in something productive and rewarding. One day I received an unexpected call from an old college friend, Jake. He had heard about my divorce and wanted to catch up. We met for lunch, and our conversation quickly turned to business. Jake had started a tech company that was gaining traction, and he was looking for investors. Intrigued by his pitch, I decided to take a chance and invest in his venture. It was a bold move, but it felt right. The company thrived, and my involvement gave me a renewed sense of purpose. Working with Jake and his team was invigorating, and I found myself excited about the future for the first time in months. Through these experiences, I began to rebuild my life, piece by piece. The support of friends like Tom and the companionship of Laura were instrumental in my recovery. I learned to trust again, not just others, but myself. The confidence that had been shattered by Emma's betrayal slowly returned. One weekend, Laura and I decided to take a trip to the mountains. It was a perfect escape from the city, a chance to reconnect with nature and each other. As we hiked through the scenic trails, I felt a sense of peace and contentment that had eluded me for so long. At the summit, we paused to take in the breathtaking view. The world stretched out before us, vast and full of possibilities. Laura turned to me, her eyes reflecting the serenity of the landscape. "I'm glad we did this," she said softly. "It's beautiful up here." I nodded, feeling a swell of gratitude. "Yeah, it is. And I'm glad you're here with me." At that moment, I realized how far I had come. The pain and betrayal that once defined my existence had been replaced by hope and new beginnings. Emma's actions had left a deep mark, but they no longer controlled my life. I had the strength to move forward, to embrace the future with an open heart. As Laura and I descended the mountain, I felt a renewed sense of optimism. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but I knew I had the resilience to face whatever came my way. With each step, I left behind the remnants of a painful past, walking towards a brighter, more promising future. Life seemed to be settling into a comfortable rhythm. My relationship with Laura was growing stronger, and my investment in Jake's tech company was flourishing. The shadows of the past were gradually fading, replaced by a hopeful future. But just as I started to feel a sense of normalcy, an unexpected twist shattered the fragile peace I had built. One afternoon, as I was leaving a business meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message sent a chill down my spine. "We need to talk. It's urgent. Dan." Dan. The name alone was enough to reignite the anger and betrayal I had worked so hard to overcome. I stared at the message, my mind racing. What could he possibly want? Against my better judgment, he got the better of me. To meet him at a nearby coffee shop. When I arrived, Dan was already there, looking just as uncomfortable as I felt. He stood as I approached, extending a hesitant hand, sitting down across from him with a glare. "What do you want, Dan?" I demanded, my voice cold. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Mike, I know I'm the last person you want to see, but this is important. It's about Emma." The mention of her name was like a punch to the gut. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotion in check. "What about her?" Dan leaned his voice. "Emma's in trouble, serious trouble. She's been involved in some shady business dealings, and now people are after her. Dangerous people." I felt a mix of disbelief and confusion. "Why are you telling me this? Thing that happened, why should I care?" "Because despite everything, you're the only one who can help her," he said, desperation clear in his eyes. "I know you was unforgivable, but she doesn't know where else to turn, to walk away, to leave the consequences of her actions. But a part of me, the part that had once loved her deeply, couldn't ignore the plea for help. I leaned back in my chair, considering his words. "Of trouble are we talking about?" I asked. Dan explained that after our divorce, Emma had gotten involved with a group of investors who promised quick returns on her money. Desperate and reckless, she had invested everything she had, and then some. When the scheme collapsed, she found herself owing a significant amount of money to dangerous people. "They've threatened," Dan said, his voice trembling. "They're serious. She needs to disappear to start over somewhere far away. But she needs money to do that, and I've got nothing to give." I felt a surge of... "So you come to me, expecting me to bail her out after she tried to steal from me? After she destroyed our life?" "I know it's a lot to ask," Dan said quietly. "But if you ever loved her, even a little, you have to help. She's in over her head." The conflict inside me was almost unbearable. Emma had betrayed me in the worst possible way, but I couldn't deny the part of me that still felt a lingering sense of responsibility for her. I knew helping her would be complicated and risky, but leaving her to face such danger alone seemed equally unbearable. "I need to think about this," I said finally, standing up. "I'll let you know my decision." As I walked out of the coffee shop, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The last thing I wanted was to get dragged back into Emma's mess, but the urgency in Dan's voice haunted me. I knew I needed to talk to someone who could provide clarity. That evening, I met Laura at her apartment. She greeted me with a warm smile, but her expression quickly changed when she saw the look on my face. Mike, what's wrong? I told her everything, from Dan's message to the situation Emma was in. Laura listened intently, her brow furrowing in concern. When I finished, she took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. Mike, this is a tough situation, she said gently. It's understandable that you feel conflicted. On one hand, she hurt you deeply, but on the other, you don't want her to come to harm. You need to do what feels right for you. I don't know what feels right, I admitted. Part of me wants to help, but another part of me is terrified of getting pulled back into that chaos. Laura reached out, taking my hand in hers. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, but make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, not out of guilt or obligation. Her words gave me some comfort, but the decision still weighed heavily on my mind. I spent the next few days wrestling with my thoughts, considering the potential consequences of helping Emma versus the guilt of abandoning her in her time of need. In the end, I made my decision. I called Dan and agreed to meet him again. The risks were high, but I couldn't ignore the part of me that still cared, however reluctantly, about Emma's well-being. It was a gamble, one that could bring unforeseen consequences, but it was a choice I felt I had to make. As I prepared for the meeting, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to take another unexpected turn. I only hoped I was ready for whatever lay ahead. The next morning, I met Dan in the same coffee shop, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. We sat at a secluded table away from prying eyes and ears. The gravity of the situation was palpable, and I could see the strain in Dan's face. Okay, Dan, I began, leaning in. I've decided to help, but this doesn't mean I'm forgiving Emma for what she did. I'm doing this because I can't ignore the danger she's in. So tell me everything. What exactly do we need to do? Dan exhaled deeply, relief evident in his eyes. Thank you, Mike. I know this isn't easy for you. The people Emma owes money to are part of a dangerous network. They're not the kind who send polite reminders. If we don't get her out soon, I'm afraid of what they might do. He pulled out a piece of paper with a series of addresses and contacts. These are the places Emma's been hiding. She's been moving around, trying to stay off their radar, but they're closing in. We need to get her somewhere safe, and fast. Where is she now? I asked, scanning the list. She's staying at a friend's place, but it's only a matter of time before they find her, Dan replied. We need to get her out of town. I've made arrangements for a safe house a few hours away, but we need to move quickly. I nodded, feeling the weight of the task ahead. All right, let's do this. But once she's safe, I'm done. I can't be involved in her life anymore. Dan agreed, and we finalized our plan. We would pick Emma up that evening and drive her to the safe house, avoiding main roads and sticking to less traveled routes to avoid detection. As I drove to the meeting point, my mind raced with thoughts of the past and the uncertain future. I remembered the good times Emma and I had shared, the dreams we had built together, and the betrayal that had torn us apart. It was hard to reconcile the woman I had loved with the one who had tried to steal my money and break my spirit. When I arrived at the rendezvous, Emma was already there, looking more vulnerable than I had ever seen her. She stood by the curb, clutching a small bag, her eyes darting nervously around. When she saw me, her face crumpled, and she hurried over. Mike, she whispered, her voice trembling. Thank you for coming. I didn't know who else to turn to. I nodded curtly, trying to keep my emotions in check. Let's get you out of here. We drove in silence, the tension in the car thick and suffocating. Emma stared out the window, lost in her thoughts, while Dan kept checking his phone for updates. As the city lights faded into the distance, the reality of what we were doing set in. After a few hours, we arrived at the safe house, a secluded cabin in the woods. It was simple but secure, a place where Emma could lay low until the danger passed. As we unpacked the car, Emma turned to me, tears in her eyes. Mike, I don't know how to thank you, she said, her voice choked with emotion. I know I don't deserve your help after everything I've done. I looked at her, feeling a mix of anger and pity. You're right, Emma. You don't. But everyone deserves a chance to make things right. This is yours. Don't waste it. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I won't, I promise. With Emma settled in, Dan and I made our way back to the car. The drive back was somber, the weight of the day's events hanging heavy in the air. When we finally parted ways, I felt an odd sense of closure, as if a chapter of my life had finally been laid to rest. Over the next few weeks, I focused on moving forward. I kept in touch with Dan, who provided updates on Emma's situation. She was safe, staying under the radar, and making efforts to repay her debts and rebuild her life. One evening, I received a call from Dan. "Mike, I thought you should know. Emma has decided to leave the country. She's starting over somewhere new, far away from all this. She asked me to thank you for everything." I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. "I hope she finds what she's looking for," I said quietly. "We all deserve a fresh start." As I hung up the phone, I realized that this was the end of a long, painful journey. Emma's departure marked a definitive end to that chapter of my life. It was time to focus on my future, free from the shadows of the past. With Laura by my side, my friends supporting me, and a renewed sense of purpose, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next. The ordeal with Emma had taught me about resilience, forgiveness, and the importance of moving on. And as I looked ahead, I felt a deep sense of hope and possibility. The road to recovery had been long and arduous, but I had emerged stronger and wiser. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly free. Months passed, and life gradually settled into a new normal. Emma was a distant memory, a chapter closed and tucked away. I focused on my work, my relationship with Laura, and rebuilding the life I wanted. It was a journey of self-discovery, learning to trust again, and finding joy in the little things. One sunny afternoon, Laura and I decided to take a weekend trip to a cozy beach town a few hours away. It was a welcome escape from the hustle and bustle of the city. The drive was filled with laughter and light-hearted conversation, a stark contrast to the tense car rides of my recent past. We arrived at a charming seaside cottage, its quaint exterior and the sound of waves crashing against the shore, instantly putting me at ease. Laura had found the place online, and it was perfect, a peaceful retreat where we could unwind and reconnect. As we unpacked, Laura suggested we take a walk along the beach. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the sand and water. We strolled hand in hand, the cool ocean breeze ruffling our hair. It felt like a scene from a movie, almost too perfect to be real. "Mike," Laura said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about the future." I glanced at her, her face illuminated by the soft evening light. "Me too," I replied, my heart swelling with affection. "I can't imagine my life without you." She smiled, squeezing my hand. "I feel the same way. But I know how hard it's been for you to trust again after everything with Emma. I want you to know that I'm here for you no matter what. We'll take things at your pace." Her words touched me deeply. Laura had been a constant source of support and understanding, never pushing me beyond what I was ready for. It was one of the many reasons I had fallen in love with her. "Thank you, Laura," I said, stopping to face her. "You've been my rock through all of this. I don't know how I would have gotten through it without you." She reached up, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You're stronger than you think, Mike, and I'm so proud of how far you've come." We continued our walk, eventually finding a spot to sit and watch the sunset. The sky was painted with hues of orange, pink, and purple, a breathtaking display that seemed to reflect the beauty of the moment. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, I felt a sense of peace and contentment that had eluded me for so long. Back at the cottage, we prepared a simple dinner, the atmosphere filled with warmth and light. Laura put on some music, and we danced around the kitchen, our movements light and carefree. It was in the small, intimate moments that I realized just how much I had regained. The darkness of the past had given way to a future filled with light and love. That night, as we lay in bed, Laura nestled against my chest. I couldn't help but think about how far I had come. The pain and betrayal of Emma's actions had once seemed insurmountable, but now they were a distant memory, overshadowed by the happiness I had found with Laura. "I love you, Laura," I whispered, my voice bearable in the quiet room. She eyes shining with affection. "I love you too, Mike." As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a deep sense of gratitude.
The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led me to this moment, to this person who had become my everything. The future was still uncertain, but I knew that with Laura by my side, I could face whatever. In the weeks that followed, my relationship with Laura continued to deepen. We talked about our dreams and aspirations, making plans for a future together. I introduced her to my family, welcomed her with open arms, and same with hers. It felt like the pieces of my life were finally falling into place. One evening, as we were sitting on the balcony of my apartment, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Laura with a thoughtful expression. There's something I've been wanting to ask you, she said, her voice steady but tinged with nervousness. I took her hand, sensing the import of her words. What is it? She breath, her eyes searching mine. How would you feel about moving in together? I know it's a big step, but I can't imagine not waking up next to you every day.
Her question took me by surprise, but in the best possible way. I had been thinking the same thing, but hadn't been sure how to bring it up. I smiled, feeling a rush of happiness. I'd love that, Laura, I replied, squeezing her hand. I can't think of anything better. We spent the next few weeks planning our move, merging our lives in a way that felt natural and right. The apartment we chose was spacious and filled with light, a perfect reflection of the life we were building together. As we unpacked boxes and arranged furniture, I couldn't help but marvel at how far I had come. The day we moved in, we stood in the middle of our new living room, surrounded by the chaos of unpacked boxes and scattered belongings. Laura turned to me, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Here's to new beginnings, she said, raising an imaginary glass. To new beginnings, I echoed, pulling her into a hug. As we stood there wrapped in each other's arms, I knew that the future was bright. The past would always be a part of me, but it no longer defined me. With Laura by my side, I felt ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, knowing that together we could overcome anything. At that moment, I felt a profound sense of hope and happiness. Life had thrown me more than my fair share of challenges, but it had also given me the strength to rise above them. And as I looked into Laura's eyes, I knew that the best was yet to come. Life with Laura was everything I had hoped for, and more. Our days were filled with laughter, love, and a sense of shared purpose. We settled into our new apartment, making it a true home. But just when I thought the past was firmly behind me, it came crashing back in a way I never expected. One crisp autumn morning, I received a phone call that would change everything. The number was unfamiliar, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello?" I said, balancing my coffee mug and a stack of paperwork. "Mike, it's Jake. We need to talk." Jake was my old college friend, now a business partner. His voice sounded urgent, almost panicked. I felt a knot form in my stomach. "Jake, what's going on? Can you meet me at the office? It's important. I'll explain everything when you get here." I agreed, feeling a sense of foreboding. When I arrived at the office, Jake was pacing, his face lined with worry. He gestured for me to sit, and I did, my anxiety growing. "What's wrong, Jake?" He handed me a folder, his expression grim. "It's about Emma." The mention of her name was like a jolt. I hadn't heard from or about Emma since she'd left the country. Opening the folder, I found a series of emails and documents, each more alarming than the last. "What is this?" I asked, my voice shaky. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Emma's involved in something big, Mike. She's been using your name and your company's name to secure investments. It's a scam, and it's catching up to her and us." I felt the blood drain from my face. "She's using my name? My company?" Jake nodded. "She's been claiming you're backing her new ventures, using forged documents. Investors are starting to get suspicious, and some have traced it back to you. We need to clear this up before it ruins us." Anger and disbelief washed over me. After everything I'd done to help her, Emma was still finding ways to drag me down. I took a deep breath, trying to process the information. "What do we do?" I asked, my mind racing. "We need to contact the authorities and clear your name, but we also need to track her down and stop her before she does more damage," Jake said, his tone resolute. I nodded, feeling a mix of determination and frustration. "Let's do it." The next few days were a blur of meetings with lawyers, calls to law enforcement, and frantic efforts to contain the fallout. I worked closely with Jake, gathering evidence and documenting everything we could to prove my innocence and expose Emma's fraud. One evening, as I was going through a stack of emails, Laura came into the room, concern etched on her face. "Mike, you've been at this for hours. Take a break," she said gently. I looked up at her, exhaustion evident in my eyes. "I can't, Laura. This is a mess, and if I don't fix it, everything I've worked for could be destroyed." She sat beside me, taking my hand. "I know this is hard, but you're not alone. We'll get through this together. You've already come so far." Her words gave me strength. With Laura's support, I felt more determined than ever to see this through. Over the next few weeks, we made significant progress. The authorities were closing in on Emma, and the evidence we had gathered was compelling. One morning, I received a call from the lead investigator. "Mike, we've located Emma. She's been arrested and is awaiting extradition." Relief washed over me. "Thank you. What happens next?" "We'll proceed with the charges. You'll likely need to testify, but it looks like we have a strong case." Hanging up the phone, I turned to Laura, who had been listening intently. "They've got her. She's going to face justice." Laura hugged me tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Mike. You did it." The news spread quickly, and soon the scandal that had threatened to ruin my life began to fade. The authorities cleared my name, and investors were reassured that I had no part in Emma's schemes. As the dust settled, I realized how much I had grown. The ordeal had tested me in ways I never imagined, but it had also shown me the depth of my resilience and the strength of my relationship with Laura. One evening, as we sat on our balcony looking out over the city, Laura took my hand. "Mike, I know this has been incredibly hard, but I believe it's made us stronger. We've faced so much together, and I know we can handle anything." I looked at her, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. "You're right, Laura. We've come through the fire, and we're stronger for it." As we watched the sun set, casting a golden glow over the skyline, I felt a profound sense of closure. The past had been tumultuous, but it had led me to this moment of peace and clarity. With Laura by my side, I was ready to embrace the future, whatever it might hold. Asterisk, asterisk, Chapter 10. Looking forward. Asterisk, asterisk. With Emma's arrest and the resolution of the scandal, I finally felt a sense of closure. The weight that had been bearing down on me for so long lifted, leaving me free to focus on the future. Laura and I had weathered the storm together, emerging stronger and more resilient than ever. As the weeks turned into months, life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Laura and I continued to build our lives together, making plans and dreaming of the future. We traveled, explored new hobbies, and cherished the simple moments of joy that came with being together. One sunny afternoon, as we were walking through the park hand in hand, Laura turned to me with a smile. "Mike, do you remember when we first met?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with nostalgia. I chuckled, the memory still fresh in my mind. "How could I forget? You spilled coffee all over me, remember?" She laughed, a melodic sound that warmed my heart. "I was so embarrassed, but I'm glad it happened. It brought us together." We continued our stroll, reminiscing about the early days of our relationship. It was amazing to think how far we had come since that chance encounter. Despite the challenges we had faced, our love had only grown stronger. As we sat on a bench overlooking the lake, I realized just how much I had to be grateful for. Emma's betrayal had been a painful chapter in my life, but it had ultimately led me to Laura and the happiness we shared. "Mike, I have something I want to ask you," Laura said, breaking the comfortable silence. I turned to her, curiosity piqued. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Mike. Will you marry me?" My heart skipped a beat, the gravity of her words sinking in. I felt a rush of emotion, overwhelming and undeniable. "Laura, I struggled to find the words, my throat tight with emotion. Yes, of course, I'll marry you." Tears welled up in her eyes as she slipped a ring onto my finger, a symbol of our love and commitment. At that moment, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the promise of our future together, I knew that I had found my home in her arms. As we embraced, I felt a profound sense of peace and happiness wash over me. The road to this moment had been long and winding, marked by heartache and hardship, but it had led me to the greatest gift of all, true love. With Laura by my side, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Our love was a beacon of hope, guiding us through the darkness and illuminating the path to a brighter tomorrow. As we walked hand in hand through the park, basking in the glow of our engagement, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The future was uncertain, but as long as we were together, I knew that anything was possible. With Laura's love as my anchor, I looked forward to the adventures that awaited us, knowing that our bond was unbreakable and our love everlasting. Together, we would write the next chapter of our story, one filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a happily ever after. The days leading up to our wedding were a whirlwind of excitement and anticipation. Laura and I threw ourselves into the planning, pouring our hearts and souls into every detail. From choosing the perfect venue to selecting the flowers and music, every decision felt like a reflection of our love and commitment to each other. As the big day approached, nerves and excitement bubbled within me. I couldn't wait to marry the woman of my dreams, to pledge my love to her in front of our friends and family. But amidst the flurry of preparations, there was a sense of calm knowing that no matter what, Laura and I were in this together. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up early, my heart pounding with anticipation. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm glow over the city. I took a moment to savor the quiet stillness, knowing that soon my life would be forever changed. As I got ready, surrounded by my closest friends, I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. Their laughter and camaraderie eased my nerves, reminding me that I was not alone on this journey. Finally, the time came to make my way to the venue. The air was charged with excitement as I walked down the aisle, my heart pounding in my chest. And then I saw her, Laura, radiant and glowing, walking towards me with a smile that took my breath away. As she reached my side, I took her hand in mine, feeling a rush of emotion. Together, we stood before our loved ones, ready to embark on the greatest adventure of our lives. The ceremony was a blur of love and laughter, tears and joy. We exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other for all eternity. And as we sealed our vows with a kiss, I knew that this was just the beginning of our forever. The reception that followed was a celebration of love and unity. Friends and family gathered around us, toasting our happiness and sharing in the joy of our union. We danced and laughed, creating memories that would last a lifetime. As the night drew to a close, Laura and I stole a moment alone, gazing up at the star-filled sky. Wrapped in each other's arms, we felt the weight of the world lift from our shoulders. This was where we belonged, side by side, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held. Our wedding day was more than just a celebration of our love. It was a testament to the strength of our bond and the resilience of our hearts. And as we looked forward to the years ahead, I knew that with Laura by my side, there was nothing we couldn't overcome. As we walked hand in hand into the night, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Our love was a beacon of light, guiding us through the darkness and illuminating the path to a lifetime of happiness and fulfillment. Forever had begun, and I couldn't wait to see where the journey would take us. With Laura's love as my anchor, I knew that the best was yet to come. And as we walked hand in hand into the future, I knew that our love would carry us through whatever adventures lay ahead. Married life with Laura was everything I had ever dreamed of, and more. Each day was filled with love, laughter, and the comfort of knowing that we were building a life together. We settled into a routine that felt natural and fulfilling, cherishing the simple moments and facing life's challenges as a team. As the months turned into years, our bond only grew stronger. We supported each other through ups and downs, celebrating successes, and leaning on each other in times of need. Our love was a constant source of strength and joy, guiding us through the trials of life with grace and resilience. Together, we traveled the world, exploring new cultures and creating memories that would last a lifetime. We laughed until our sides hurt, danced like nobody was watching, and held each other close during quiet moments of reflection. But amidst the joy and laughter, there were moments of sadness too. We faced loss and heartache together, saying goodbye to loved ones, and weathering the storms of life with courage and grace. But through it all, our love remained unwavering, a beacon of light in the darkest of times. As the years passed, our love only deepened. We grew old together, our hair turning gray and our faces lined with age, but our hearts still beating as one. And as we looked back on a lifetime of love and memories,
I knew that marrying Laura had been the best decision of my life. On our golden anniversary, surrounded by family and friends, we renewed our vows, pledging our love to each other once again. And as we danced under the stars, I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. A lifetime of love and happiness, shared with the person who had stolen my heart so many years ago. As we grew old together, our love only grew stronger. As we looked forward to the years ahead, I knew that no matter what life threw our way, we would face it together, hand in hand, heart to heart. For ours was a love that had stood the test of time, a love that would endure for all eternity. And as we embraced each other, surrounded by the warmth of our loved ones, I knew that I was the luckiest person in the world to have found my forever in Laura's arms. As Laura and I entered our twilight years, our love only deepened, anchoring us in a sea of memories and shared experiences. We had weathered life's storms together, emerging stronger and more resilient with each passing year. But as we approached the end of our journey, we knew it was time to reflect on the legacy we would leave behind. Together we had built a life filled with love, laughter, and purpose. We had raised a family, nurtured friendships, and made a positive impact on the world around us. But as we looked back on our lives, we realized that our greatest legacy was the love we had shared, a love that had transcended time and space, leaving an indelible mark on the hearts of all who knew us. As we sat together in our favorite spot, overlooking the garden we had tended for decades, I took Laura's hand in mine, feeling the weight of a lifetime of memories between us. "Laura, do you remember the day we first met?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She smiled, her eyes twinkling with affection. "Of course I do. How could I forget? It was the day my life changed forever." I squeezed her hand gently, overcome with emotion. "You've been my rock, Laura. Through every joy and sorrow, you've been by my side, guiding me with your love and wisdom. I don't know where I'd be without you." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at me, her gaze filled with tenderness. "And you've been mine, Mike. You've given me a lifetime of love and happiness, and I'm grateful for every moment we've shared." As we sat together in the fading light, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the warmth of our love, I knew that our time together was drawing to a close. But even as our bodies grew frail and our memories faded, our love would endure, a timeless testament to the power of the human spirit. In the days that followed, we said our final goodbyes, surrounded by family and friends who had been touched by our love. And as we took our last breaths, I knew that our legacy would live on in the hearts of those we had loved and cherished. For ours was a love that knew no bounds, a love that had transcended time and space, leaving an indelible mark on the world around us. And as we departed this life, hand in hand, heart to heart, I knew that our love would live on for all eternity, a beacon of hope and inspiration for generations to come. In the wake of Laura's passing, my world felt empty, as if a part of me had been torn away. The days stretched on, a blur of grief and longing, as I struggled to come to terms with the loss of the love of my life. But even as I mourned her absence, I found solace in the memories we had shared and the enduring legacy of our love. As I sat alone in our empty home, surrounded by reminders of Laura's presence, I felt her spirit still lingering, comforting me in my darkest moments. Her laughter echoed in the halls, her touch lingered in the gentle breeze, and her love enveloped me like a warm embrace. In the quiet moments of reflection, I found myself drawn to the garden we had tended together, a sanctuary of life and beauty that had been a labor of love for us both. Amidst the blossoms and greenery, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, as if Laura's spirit was still there, guiding me forward. In the weeks that followed, I found solace in the love and support of friends and family who rallied around me in my time of need. Their presence brought me comfort and strength, reminding me that I was not alone in my grief. But amidst the pain of loss, I also found moments of joy and gratitude for the love we had shared. Our life together had been a gift, a journey of laughter and tears, triumphs and challenges, that had shaped me into the person I was today. As I looked back on our time together, I realized that Laura's love would always be a part of me, a guiding light that would lead me forward, even in the darkest of times. And though she was no longer by my side, her presence would live on in my heart for all eternity. In the quiet moments of the night, I whispered words of love to the stars, knowing that Laura was watching over me from above. As I closed my eyes and drifted off to sleep, I felt her spirit surround me, wrapping me in a blanket of love that would never fade. For ours was a love that transcended time and space, a bond that could never be broken, even by death itself. As I faced the uncertainty of the days ahead, I took comfort in the knowledge that Laura's love would always be with me, guiding me through life's journey with grace and dignity. In the end, I knew that our love was eternal, a timeless testament to the power of the human spirit and the enduring legacy of love. And as I stepped into the future, I did so with gratitude in my heart, knowing that Laura's love would always be my guiding light. In the years that followed Laura's passing, I found solace in the memories we had shared and the love that had sustained us through the trials of life. Though her physical presence was gone, her spirit lived on in the hearts of those who had been touched by her kindness and grace. As I navigated the days without her by my side, I found purpose in honoring her legacy and preserving the love we had shared. I threw myself into charitable work, supporting causes that had been dear to Laura's heart and making a positive impact in the world in her name. Together with our children and grandchildren, we celebrated Laura's life and the love she had brought into the world. We shared stories and laughter, remembering her warmth and compassion, and finding comfort in the knowledge that her spirit lived on in each of us. In the quiet moments of reflection, I felt her presence all around me, a gentle reminder that she was never truly gone, but lived on in the memories we cherished and the love that bound us together. And as I looked to the future, I knew that Laura's legacy would continue to inspire and uplift those who followed in her footsteps. For hers was a life well lived, a testament to the power of love to transform hearts and change lives. In the end, I found peace in knowing that our love would endure, transcending time and space to touch the lives of generations to come. As I carried her memory in my heart, I knew that Laura's spirit would always be with me, guiding me forward with love and light. In the wake of Laura's passing, life took on a new rhythm, a melody of grief and healing, of loss and renewal. Though her absence left a void in my heart, I found solace in the love and support of friends and family who rallied around me in my time of need. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, I began to find moments of light amidst the darkness. I rediscovered passions and interests that had lain dormant for years, throwing myself into new projects and pursuits with a renewed sense of purpose. One day, as I was sorting through old photographs, I came across a picture of Laura and me on our wedding day, a radiant smile on her face, her eyes shining with love. At that moment, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me, a reminder of the love we had shared and the memories we had created together. Inspired by her memory, I decided to embrace life with renewed vigor, to honor her legacy by living each day to the fullest, just as she would have wanted. I reached out to old friends, rekindling connections that had faded over the years, and sought out new experiences that filled me with joy and purpose. And as I ventured out into the world once more, I found unexpected blessings waiting for me around every corner. I discovered new friendships and forged deeper connections with those around me, finding comfort in the shared experience of loss and renewal. As the seasons changed and life continued to unfold, I realized that Laura's spirit lived on in the beauty of the world around me, in the laughter of children, the warmth of the sun on my face, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. And though I would always carry her memory in my heart, I knew that the time had come to embrace a new chapter in my life, a chapter filled with hope and possibility and the promise of new beginnings. With Laura's love as my guiding light, I stepped forward into the unknown, ready to embrace whatever the future held with open arms. For hers was a legacy of love that would endure for all eternity, shining brightly in the hearts of those who had been touched by her grace. Amid grief and loss, life carried on, relentless in its forward march. Days turned into nights, seasons changed, and the world continued to spin on its axis. But amidst the turmoil of emotions, there were moments of unexpected lightness, fleeting glimpses of joy that served as reminders of the beauty of life. As I navigated the complexities of grief, I found solace in the small moments of everyday life, the warmth of a cup of tea on a chilly morning, the laughter of children playing in the park, and the gentle hum of music in the background. In these simple pleasures, I found a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times there was still light to be found. Slowly but surely, I began to rediscover a sense of purpose and meaning in my life. I threw myself into my work, finding fulfillment in the challenges it presented and the sense of accomplishment that came with each small victory. I reconnected with old hobbies and interests, immersing myself in the joy of creation and self-expression. And amidst the busyness of life, I found moments of quiet reflection, allowing myself to sit with my grief and process the complex emotions that came with it. I sought out support from friends and family, leaning on them for strength and encouragement as I navigated the rocky terrain of loss. As time passed, I found myself opening up to the possibility of love once more. Though the thought of moving on felt daunting at first, I knew that Laura would have wanted me to find happiness again, to embrace life with open arms and an open heart. And so, I began to tentatively dip my toe back into the waters of romance, opening myself up to new connections and experiences. I met new people, shared stories and laughter, and allowed myself to be vulnerable in a way I hadn't been in years. And then, when I least expected it, I met someone who sparked a fire within me, a kindred spirit whose presence lit up my world in ways I had never imagined. With them, I found myself laughing more, smiling more, and feeling more alive than I had in years. As we embarked on this new journey together, I knew that I would never forget Laura or the love we had shared. She would always hold a special place in my heart, a guiding light in the darkness, reminding me to embrace life with courage and resilience. But as I looked to the future, I allowed myself to believe that there was still joy to be found, that even amid loss, there was still beauty and wonder to be discovered. And with each passing day, I found myself stepping closer to that elusive sense of happiness, knowing that I was not alone on this journey, but surrounded by love in all its many forms.